Good evening. I feel kind of overdressed. No one told me about the dress code. Avi called like 3 times a day saying you cannot go over your 18 minutes. You got to show passion. You got to be humorous. But he never said, don't wear. So that's the reason why I overdressed. And especially following Neeraj's presentation and his wonderful stories, I feel kind of like an imposter standing here. Let me tell you a little bit about why we chose this title, Transforming a City, a Village, a Country, and the World. Here are the reasons that Neeraj just talked about, which is life and the damage to the environment and the others. So what I thought I would do is, I will tell you that we are living in the most extraordinary times, and we have a small window to get things done. And we have to get this done for all the reasons that not only affect the environment, but also economic. Let me just start first. If you look at the world top 10 economies going back to 1820, you will see that India and China were the number 1 and number 2. But after that, 1999, you see that China is still on the top 10, but not India. If you go to 2009, India and Brazil is on there, but by 2050, India is number 3. But here's the most striking fact. Only 2 European countries on the top 10, and they are shrinking rapidly. Today, 9 out of 10 children under the age of 15 live in developing economies. 20% of the teenagers in the world live in India. If you look at those statistics, by definition, the next Facebook over the next 20 years should come out of India or China. But it is not deterministic. Look at these statistics. Here's the other thing that is very interesting. And you know, you've been reading in the news that 6.9%, 6.8% for India. And some of us say, so what? You know, US is only 2%. But there's a huge, huge problem behind that statistic. Till the 1950s, if you go back 150 to 200 years, the fastest growth of a country was 2.2%. That 2.2% is what created Germany, what created the US, what created France, Italy, and UK. 2.2 was the fastest growth rate of a country for 200 years till the 1950s. You need to get 7% at the minimum for the next 25 years for a developing country to become a middle class to a developed country. If you miss that 7%, you add 6 to 8 additional years in your economic development. And for a place like India, for a place, choose any sub-Saharan country, if they do not grow and if they do not manage the economic development, we will have serious problems going beyond wildlife deprivation. So in that context, transform the world. And what the story that I want to tell is that the internet, the stuff that we all want, is no longer the information highway. It is not about email, it is not about Facebook, it is not about YouTube. It is about using that as a platform to offer new healthcare, new education, new forms of transportation, and then saving some of our wildlife and urbanization. In India, if you just take the developing countries, over the next 10 years, there will be 700 million people moving from villages to cities. India will go from 310 million people to 575 million. The infrastructure of cities will not handle it. Today, on a daily basis, 190,000 people move from villages into cities, which means you're creating one Tokyo every year for a foreseeable future. In that environment, how do we create so that we have children? So we come back and we say the median age of India today is 23 years old, 60%. By 2020, the median age for India is going to be 27 years or 28 years. For China, it's going to be 38. For Japan, it's going to be 49. For Europe, it's 45. We have a big problem that if our children, the 600 million children in the villages, don't get education, health care, there's no 7% GDP growth. There's going to be violence. In that context, how do we do this worldwide? So I want to imagine. So Avi, I'm going to be now dreaming. This is one of your 10 things that you told me to do. What if you had unlimited computing almost free? What if you had unlimited storage, almost free? What if everything was connected to everything? Would you run a city the same way? Would you run healthcare the same way? Would you run your business the same way? I want you to dream of that, and I'm going to tell you we're almost there. Let me give you some statistics. Computing is almost free. Since 1992 to 2008, the price of a MIP has gone from $222 down to $27, and over the next few years it'll go down to the pennies. Storage. Since 1992 to 2008, it's gone down from $569 down to 13 cents, and it'll be free over the next few years on a gigabyte. Now, this may not impress you, but I want to give you some more clarity on this. This is what a 5 meg drive looked like in 1956. Let me put it in perspective. A 5 meg drive can hold the entire works of Shakespeare. And it can hold one of Adele's songs. So if you want in your iPod 50 songs, you need 50 of those in 1956. And by the way, the cost for that is $10 million each. Today, this is what you get for 8 cents. By the way, my presentation, if I have to do this presentation with my video, I would need 120 of those big disk drives just to store it. By 2020, it's going to be different. Let me just take today. If you stored all the recorded music in the world, every recorded music in the world, if you stored it, it would cost you $600. Storage is almost free. Now, bandwidth, this is a different story. However, it's come down from $1,000 to $130, and it's going down rapidly. In fact, what is interesting is, in Asia, bandwidth is 300 times more than in the Western countries, except for Korea. So if you had bandwidth, what would you do? And if everything was connected, what would you do? 2008, the number of connected devices exceeded the people. By 2015, there'll be 25 billion things that are connected. By year 2020, 50 billion things will be connected. And it'll give you a trillion people. Now, do we care about this? And why should you care about this? Because what is going to happen is you put them all together, and the internet is now slowly shifting to the next internet. And that is the platform for everything, where the internet is pervasive. You don't get on the internet. You don't think about the internet. It is you. It is all around us. It will be all around us. And it is that idea that becomes a platform for change. So I want to give you some more facts. Just by 2013, video is going to be 91% of the internet. Let me give you some statistics. By 2015, in 1 second, on the internet, there will be 1 million minutes of video uploaded every second. 1 million minutes of video. That is 166,000 hours. That is almost 2 years worth of video seeing every second in the year 2015. By 2020, one of your families, an individual typical household, will load more internet traffic than all of internet traffic in 2008. That's the world you're going to live in. All of us. And this is exciting because it's going to be relatively cheap. What does this all mean? I'm going to show you the video as it is today. Now, we have all talked about, if you're going to do services, the musician should be somewhere close to you, or the hair guy who cuts your hair, or the doctor. I'm going to show you something that we do today, where we had the opera singers sitting at our offices. We had the orchestra on stage in Hanover, and we said, now do an entire concert. Can you imagine doing concert live with Skype or any other video conferencing? I want you to watch this. This is just a snippet. Where's the sound?
Good morning. Guten Tag. Wo ist der Kaffee? Der steht schon da. Kann man uns in Hannover gut sehen und verstehen? Wir sehen Sie ganz tadellos, ja. Mit Telepresent gibt's nie ein Problem, kein Problem. Telepresent ist ganz wunderbar, ja. I'm the director of the country.
So this is what we do today. I'm going to tell you what we already did a couple of years ago, where the market and technology already exists. Now, all of you need to start dreaming about what you would do differently in healthcare because of telepresence or because of these news videos. I'm going to show you something else that happened here in Bangalore.
So picture this as an opportunity for the future, to have meetings as simple off a single PC screen, or your TV set at home, or the telepresence units like Wim showed you with Professor Kalam and people around the world, or think about it virtually, where the majority of communications will not be voice. The majority of communications will be body English and the ability as though you're physically in the same location. So at this time, I'd like to beam up Martin De Beers and Chuck Stuckey back from San Jose. Martin, I'm beaming you up now with my spatial controls. How are you doing? Hey, Chuck, how you doing?
We're doing great, thank you.
You can say, John, that's very expensive, what you are proposing. You can have the technology at this level for perhaps healthcare in certain sites. You could have a telepresence in a simpler level where you literally are able to connect any device to be able to capture that information and to give it to the key doctors around the world and for them to collaborate together on a diagnosis. So this is something that just won't be at the very high end of the market. It will come all the way down to rural communities over time.
Okay, well, I just realized I'm doing another part of the world, but before I go, just to have a little bit of fun, I know that as our day ends here, it's almost 10 o'clock, that we're going to toss the ball, as it were, every day to our Globalization Center in the East. So I wanted to make a little pass to Wim out in the audience.
Now, I have to make a claim. The ball didn't come through the screen. We're working on it. It'll be there soon. But here is the point that he said. Remember, the rural doctors, when you consider whether it's in India or Zambia, for example, in Zambia there are 600 doctors trained, but only 50 doctors stay back for the whole of the country. If you take a look at here in India, where the majority of the people live in villages, but majority of the cardiologists and the doctors are in cities, how do you deliver doctors? How do you deliver education to rural areas so that little children who have one teacher in the entire school can get access to great quality education remotely? So this is where we want to dream. There is no reason why a child in Africa should never see a cardiologist because there is no cardiologist in Tanzania. There is no reason for children in Raichur or in Amethi to have children not go to school because of diarrhea, when these technologies exist at a reasonable price. So we are working with doctors. Here's the interesting statistic. For 80% of a doctor's visit, the doctor doesn't need to touch you. As long as you train a paramedic and you have this distance structure, you can have a doctor sitting somewhere else training, nurses, training paramedics, and then offering these high-quality services for medicine, for education, and other parts of the healthcare system. Same thing with music. Same thing, there's an unemployed teacher sitting in Idaho who's upset about jobs going to Bangalore, but that unemployed teacher teaching English could get a lot of money training kids in Korea because of the highway system. By the way, the highest salary, the highest earning teacher in Korea is an English teacher who makes $1 million doing online tutoring of English. So there's a huge set of opportunities that if you dream and you use the platform, then you can solve for the world's problems. Because otherwise, the developing countries, whether it's the Middle East or Africa or Asia, you don't have the economic sustenance to do it. In India, you need $1.2 trillion for infrastructure. We have $26 billion in JNURM. We need a new way to think about this. So the question I would say to end this is this a new dawn or a false beginning? All this infrastructure, all these IT systems, so that you can treat IT like you treat water. You don't think much when you turn on the water. You want it there. Or electricity, or your phones. It is most amazing for me 3 years later to travel anywhere in the world, the phone adjusts to the country I land. This is a huge accomplishment, and IT is there. So we have to start thinking about offering service anywhere on education, healthcare. This is a false beginning. I'm going to show you two things to end my discussion here. My favorite, Thomas Edison. I collect Edison phonographs, the cylinder types, the ones that came before the disc, from the 1880s to the 1910s. And I have one of the largest collections in the world. But this is what it used to look like. This is the top of the line Idalia. It cost $3,000 in 1910, which is more than a house and a farm. But this is what he created. If he was born again and he came to Bangalore, he came to my house in Florida, and he saw this machine, he would say, I saw that, I touched it. He saw my other machines, he said, I made that, because there's only 3 known to exist. But then I said, let me show you what Ambika, my daughter here, who's sitting in the back, listens to, and show her iPod. And especially Adele, he would not get Adele. But he will never, ever conceive how what he invented ended up with the iPod. It just would not. He would sit there saying, explain this to me again. After we've done that, I take him to a utility store, and this is what he came up, one of his 10 inventions, is the grid, the electricity grid. He invented GE and Con Edison. This is what the grid he created. He drew it up and said, this is how we should be creating electricity worldwide. Do you want to see what an electric smart grid looks today? Can you tell me the difference? 120 years later, it's still the same. Today, in power, the power companies in the US spends 0.3% on R&D, which is less than what pet companies spend on R&D for pet food. This is the reason why we have power problems, shortages. The other thing is, in a typical building, a brand new building, a typical building has 85 protocols that don't talk to each other. HVAC system doesn't talk to electricity. Electric systems don't talk to the telephone system. The telephone systems don't talk to the elevators. Nobody talks to each other. And that results in 40% of energy waste in a typical building, which is the reason why we have energy problems. We can connect them all on the network, manage it, and we can do that. That's where we have to be. But to get there, you need visionary leadership. You need smart regulations. You need public-private partnerships. You need new ecosystems. This is what we have to do in the next 30 years. Whether you're an academic, whether you're a politician, whether you're a professor, or whether you're a businessman like I am, or a combination as I am. But we will not get there unless people have a passion to change the current conditions. So I'm going to end by saying the only way we're going to get that transforming the world, the city, and the village is if we have the passion to say, I am going to transform healthcare. I'm going to transform government. In India, there is a big gap for healthcare. 1.6% of the GDP goes on corruption just to public officials. My daughter just did a paper on it. I was going through it. 1.6% of the GDP is lost on corruption to the government officials. By the way, if that is cut by half, you can solve for your education gap and your healthcare gap in India. But this is what we need to fix. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation on the high note that we will get it done. I'm sure, because all of us will get it done. In particular, the kids in this room. Thank you.